Welcome to a new episode of the Sports Mecca podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Abramo. As always, I'm joined by my co host, Sam Hengeli. Today, we are joined by former Pitt Panthers quarterback, Nick Patti. Nick, Sam, and I appreciate the time this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have a lot to discuss in this episode. Little bit of different angles about before you were in college, your time as a collegiate quarterback. But just to for for the listeners out there, just talk to us about what your life has been like for the past couple months.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely a little bit different, now than anything I've experienced. August for me was always the month of getting into the gear of the football season. It's kind of when your summer ended, when your life was over for a few months. So it's definitely last year and this year been a little bit different. Having August to be able to, do things myself and spend time with family and go on a few trips. So definitely a good change of pace. Going into, having a job, it's still going to be the same grind, right? You're still working hard, you're still competing, but just not on the football field now, not on the playing surface now, just competing in a different aspect of life.
hmm Now, you were at Pitt from 2019 to 2022. You had an extra year of eligibility to use in 2023 because of the COVID rules and all of the NCAA. But you decided to finish your degree and then retire from football. Walk us through after that 22 season, after you played in the Sun Bowl, um, your emotions, and then ultimately deciding to retire.
Yeah, 100%. So really, I mean, there was definitely a lot that went into that decision. I had played 5 seasons with Pitt, uh, had built great relationships there. Definitely appreciated my time there. Appreciated the degrees that I was able to get while I was there. And I had it mapped out when I was going to finish my MBA. I knew that it'd either be that or that spring semester or sometime over the summer. And I kind of had that planned out. And really the question was, do I want to come back for a sixth year and compete and kind of delay my degree? Or do I want to just call it quits? And on a high note, we had won our last game of the season in that Sun Bowl. Um, and like I said, a lot of things that went into that. Being able to be done with my degree earlier was definitely a pro. Also, along with that, I came out healthy, which was huge. I had experienced a few injuries in my college career, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting out healthy. But really, what it boiled down to was I satisfied with my career, and I definitely was. I was happy with the amount of time that I played, the uh, the caliber of the games that I played in, and how I performed in those games. So I figured I had a good enough college career for myself, and I definitely have seen some of my teammates hang on to the game for too long, and end up regretting it and wishing they had those years back, that maybe they felt like they wasted on trying to chase that dream. So I felt comfortable with where I was at, and I was ready to move on to a different chapter of life.
hmm Now, we'll have some questions a little bit later on about when you were heading into Pitt, but the fact is you are from New Jersey, Hillsdale, New Jersey. It is noted for having a lot of really premier high schools and a lot of recruits that have come through that state or that area. Just update us and talk to us about what it was like being a recruit in that hotbed of the East Coast in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a weird thing when you're, 13, 12, 13, 14 years old getting recruited to go to high school. It made me a little bit more prepared for college. But yeah, it's a unique area. There's definitely a lot of talent over here. High population, so you assume that you get a good amount more players that play and just compete. So I think New Jersey, North Jersey specifically, does a really good job of pulling the talent together. If you are, have any type of talent really coming up in sixth, seventh, eighth grade, you're going to be contacted by one of those schools, whether it's, St. Joe's, Bergen Catholic, Don Bosco, Paramus Catholic, one of those schools will reach out to you. They also host like a ton of youth camps. So if you do want to get noticed, you can attend those camps. You'll be right in front of those coaches. But it's definitely really competitive for such a young age. So it was interesting to be able to see the similarities between being recruited to high school and being recruited to college.
Was Pitt one of the few offers? Did you have more than a couple offers recruiting you at the FBS D1 level?
Yeah, so my recruiting kind of was a little bit delayed. I started as a sophomore at St. Joe's, and let's just say it was a rocky sophomore season. I did not play as well as I would have liked to. I did not get enough or as much attention as I would have liked to coming out as a sophomore. But then my junior year is when we really took off as a team. We had a lot of talent, a lot of seniors that we had brought back going into my junior year. And we were really successful. We finished 9-2. We were in the top 20 in the country, which definitely sparked some interest from some college coaches. And I always tell, high schoolers or kids that are looking to get recruited, when you get that first scholarship offer, expect that phone to keep ringing. My first offer was Old Dominion, and right after that, Toledo offered me, and then the gates kind of opened up. So I finished with, I believe, 18 offers, some Ivy League, a few FCS, a few FBS, a few Power Fives. But my recruiting in terms of the larger schools actually took off my senior year after I was already committed to Pitt. Because the way that it kind of works, at least in my experience, was when these big schools didn't get maybe the 5-star, the high 4-star that they wanted, then they'd work their way down the list. And me, I was sitting at like a high 3-star, low 4-star. So my senior year was when a lot of those larger schools started to gain some interest in me after they didn't get their guys. So for instance, I was getting recruited by Penn State after Justin Fields had just decommitted from Penn State. So I kind of got that interest after they didn't get the guy that they wanted. So I finished with 18 offers. I had, like I said, a lot more schools interested in me. But once I committed to Pitt, I knew that that was the school that I wanted to be at. I had taken a visit there earlier that year, and I love the city. I love the coaching staff. The players I meshed with really well. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've had several current and former college quarterbacks that have been on the podcast, but I am interested to hear your thoughts on what's an underrated aspect that just quarterbacks specifically have to adjust to from high school to college.
Yeah, that's an absolutely great question. I would say really, I mean, in high school, I would say there was you'd always look at the scouting report and say, all right, from a quarterback perspective, what cornerback are we going to go at? What safety is a little bit weaker? Who's not the great cover guy? And in college, that conversation is really different. Everyone in college was the best athlete on their high school team. So the weak link is a little bit stronger in college than they are in high school. And it's the same conversation for the NFL. I mean, you see in the NFL, they try and pick on corners, they try and pick on safeties, whoever it is. And sometimes those guys end up making the game-winning interception because everyone's talented. Everyone's just a little bit better. So I would say there's no real weak link, and the speed of the game is a lot faster. Definitely takes a little while to adjust to, for sure.
So Nick, in high school, you got the opportunity to meet an NFL legend, Phil Simms. What were some things you learned with him with that interaction?
Yeah, 100%. I had the benefit of someone that worked in our school. One of the teachers in our school had been he had played football in high school, and he gained a connection through with Phil Simms. And he saw some type of talent in me and said that it'd be beneficial if I got the chance to train with him. So he made that connection, and I went to go work out with him. First time, I was so nervous. I walked in, and it was Matt Sims, his son, throwing to a few receivers that were, some were college guys, some had bounced around the NFL a little bit, but he kind of just threw me in with Matt, and I was able to, learn from Matt. Matt kind of took me under his wing. I probably didn't throw one spiral all day because I was so nervous. And then me and Matt gained a great friendship. Just him trying to make it in the NFL, trying to stick around, me, trying to find a way to get into college football and get some offers. So just that dynamic, and Phil watching us and coaching us both, kind of like I was his son as well, just teaching us and taking us under his wing was really cool. And I got the opportunity to it might have been a few weeks, few months later, I walk into a workout and there's Geno Smith throwing as well. So that was pretty cool. The guys that I got to meet, I got to throw with David Njoku, who's the tight end for the Browns, couple other NFL tight ends, just really, really cool experience of some guys that I got to work with, and the competition made me better for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of NFL level quarterbacks, you got to play with one with Kenny Pickett, who is also a Heisman candidate during the 2021 season. What was it like being in the same quarterback room as Kenny Pickett, and what were some of the things that you took away from your time being with him?
Yeah, 100%. So he's a great person. He's one of my best friends. He was someone that, you see it a lot with NFL guys and even college guys that, they do all the right things and maybe they don't have as much production as other guys. So I was with him from 2018 to when he left in 2021, and the 2018, 19, and 20 season, I believe he threw like 12 or 13 touchdowns all 3 years. But you watch the film and he's grading out at 95, 96, 97%, where he's just doing all the right things, but he's not putting the numbers up. And finally, it's like that picture of that guy like chipping away at the dirt to try and get to the diamond. Finally, he got it right, and he threw 42 touchdowns his last year, and he did all the same things. I mean, he was grading out at 95, not to 97% every game, but now he was just getting the numbers along with it. So it took him a little while to finally put the numbers up, but he was always doing the right things, and that was someone to model after. I mean, he was the first one in the building, last one to leave. He was always, whenever we were doing conditioning, he lifted the most weight, he ran the fastest. And it's a testament to the work that he put on off the field and how much effort he put in.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about playing for the Pitt Panthers is you get share the same stadium and facilities as the NFL team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did you have any moments where you had some interactions with some of the Steelers players during your time as a Pitt Panther?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the times they would be, if the weather wasn't nice in Pittsburgh, which usually it's not, we get a lot of rain, a lot of snow, that whole deal. So we have one indoor facility, and we would always practice before the Steelers. So you could always count on them coming in 5-10 minutes early and watching the end of our practice. And there were always, towards the end, a few like big plays made, and they would run on the field and celebrate with us. Whether it was a touchdown or a game-ending interception at the end of our practice, which was cool to interact and have them be watching us. But the biggest part is the coaches are in there watching us as well. So if you go into the facility on the Pitt side, there's a wall of every NFL helmet, and it's every player that has played for those NFL teams that went to Pitt. And, there's one row, two rows full, maybe, 15, 20 people for each team. And then the Steelers has like 70 people. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly why, because they're able to watch our practices and they see our film, they see, the work that we put in every day. And it's a really good segue for those guys that, maybe want to get in the NFL that don't have as much notoriety. they can find their way in with the Steelers and then, try and make it work from there. So it was a really cool dynamic.
You ever get an opportunity to meet Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, so he's as personable as anyone. You walk by him in the facility, he says, "What's up, guys?" and gives you a bunch of fist pounds. If you have a big game coming up, he keeps track of your schedule. So he'll say, like, go beat Clemson or go beat Duke, whoever we're playing, which is really cool to see the Steelers coach interested in what you're doing on a day-to-day.
Yeah, that'd have been kind of cool too. And like Kenny got drafted by the Steelers, you got to see him still like pretty often, I bet, when he was with the when Kenny Pickett got drafted by the Steelers.
Yeah, no, 100%. We always joke that he would live in the same college house. He wouldn't leave his house even when he was with the Steelers. But obviously he upgraded a little bit and lived in a nicer place in Pittsburgh. But it was cool to be able to still, I being the backup for him, we would always get lunch on Thursday, the week before games. And it was cool that, even when he was on the Steelers, we still continued that tradition of me and him grabbing lunch together, which was awesome.
That's great. Love to hear that. So during your long college career, what were some of your favorite moments during that time?
Yeah, good question. I would say probably, definitely when we won the ACC, that was huge. That was a surreal moment. We always, at least in my time there, whenever we finished practice, we'd always break it down on ACC champs. And there were definitely times where that didn't seem possible. When we were just above 500 or sitting around 500. And then, like I said, everything clicked that 2021 year and we made it happen. And we overcame a ton of adversity. We had injuries that season, but we made it work. And then, I would say definitely the times that I got to play and contribute in some big games. Early in my career, we beat UCF, which at that time they were on that huge streak. They had won, 25 or whatever it was straight regular season games. And we were the first team to beat them. And that was huge. I was able to come in for a few plays and throw a touchdown and contribute in that game. And then just really the bowl prep too, both for the Peach Bowl when we played Michigan State, and then the Sun Bowl when we played UCLA. Just being able to prep for those games and be the guy for a month, 2 months was a pretty cool experience.
Oh, awesome. So you got to play in many different college venues. You got to play at what was Heinz Field? I forget what they call it now there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Acrisure. It's
Acrisure.
Disgrace.
I'll always call it Heinz Field.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, but you also got to play at some other pretty cool venues in the sport of college football. What were some of your other favorite venues you got to play in as a road opponent?
Yeah, so I would say my favorite place that we consistently played at was Virginia Tech. That place is insane. Not a huge stadium. I don't know how much they seat, but about as loud as anywhere as I've ever played. That entrance where they do enter Sandman, the whole place is bouncing. You're shaking in the tunnel waiting to come out, the pavement shaking, everything shaking. So it's a pretty cool experience at that place. And then we played at Penn State, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to bash Penn State because it's very loud there, but it is much louder at Virginia Tech. And when we played at Tennessee as well, it is louder in those two places, even though they don't have as many students or fans there. Just the way the stadium is built, I feel like Penn State is built more out where the fans aren't as on top of you, where at Tennessee and Virginia Tech, it's a tall stadium. So the fans are right on top of you, and it's kind of like a dome where the sound just stays in there. So I would say my favorite place was probably Tennessee that we played at. We only played there once, but consistently every year we'd play Virginia Tech. So playing there a few times was really cool.
Yeah, I've been to a game at Neyland Stadium, and I mean that atmosphere is incredible, especially for like a high quality matchup. Place gets really loud and
yeah, really, really cool place to play. The people are really nice, and then when the game starts, they are not nice, which is kind of what It's what
Yeah.
you want when you're on the road. You want the hostile environment. You want the hatred in the stadium. It's
Yeah.
a cool place to play.
Yeah. Makes college football that much special.
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah. So you got to play, I'll still call it Heinz Field. So what would you say is the big difference between an NFL stadium versus a college football stadium, with playing in an NFL stadium and then playing inside different college venues?
Yeah, I would say the NFL stadium is a lot. I don't want to say more well kept, because I feel like all the stadiums have kind of even in college, have a standard of taking care of the field and taking care of the venue. But I would say it just has like a more professional feel to it, which you kind of expect. But I feel like the grass is a little bit more well kept. The stadium's a little bit cleaner. Definitely the locker rooms are a lot better, and you have a lot more space in there. We actually were renovating our home locker room, so we had to be in the away locker room at Heinz Field for some of our scrimmages, and the away locker room is just as nice as the home locker room.
Mhm.
Where sometimes when you go on the road, like at some of these places, you're in like a 2x4 room where everyone's just like packed in. So that I would definitely say it has more of a professional feel, and it takes care of the away team a little bit better.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then I'm a Kansas football fan, and this year, KU, because their stadium's being currently renovated, they'll be playing their home games at Arrowhead this year. So I'm gonna be very intrigued how that all works out. And then obviously you had that experience, so that'll be kind of interesting seeing how KU does at Arrowhead this year. And obviously Pitt and the U and University of Miami, they play in an NFL stadium as well. And there are a couple others as well I just can't think of, but definitely an interesting perspective that you have, just being able to play in that venue for 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely a selling point in recruiting too. Being able to sell to recruits that, hey, you're practicing, you're eating, you're playing with the pros, is really cool. And that was something that I thought was interesting when I was going to Pitt. And I know some of the guys at Miami think that that's a pretty cool thing too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. My last question to you is, any advice to those chasing a dream?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I went to a high school that you kind of had to specialize, right? Like, so I played basketball as a freshman, and I played basketball growing up. It was probably my favorite sport. I probably like playing basketball more than I did football. But once I was gearing up to be the starter as a sophomore, my coach said like, "Hey, you're going to be done with basketball. You're going to be a full-time football player." And I think that it benefited me, but I think that you should try and compete in a bunch of different sports. I don't think that, I mean, some of the best athletes that I had played with, played basketball, they ran track, they played baseball, and they played football. So I think just if you really in high school, if you're passionate about something and you want to keep playing, don't think like, hey, I want to play football in college, so I have to only be a football player. You might find a different avenue. I mean, we had so many NFL players players that I played with in college that got drafted to the MLB. And they had that opportunity. They just chose football. So don't think that you have to be a one sport athlete. Try as many sports as you want. Keep playing as many sports as you want, because at the end of the day, being competitive year round is what's going to help you in the long run in all your sports.
Oh, absolutely. That's great advice, and I've always been preaching that for years. And I mean, Patrick Mahomes, look at him, watch him way he throws the football. It's like the same way he throws a baseball and puts some basketball in it. Tom Brady was drafted by the Montreal Expos. And I mean, there's some LeBron James, he played wide receiver in high school and was very elite at it. So a lot of the top athletes you look at, all not just in the NFL but in the NBA or Major League Baseball or some in the NHL, they played multiple sports. Like, they were developed their skills, and some of the body, especially like the body component, was helped develop by playing another sport, trying to get stronger at that too. And then it just all came together to play this one. And you can see some of the success of a lot of these guys who were able to get to the pros was because they were so good at other sports as well, because they had that competitive edge and they didn't get burnt out. So I really loved how you preached that as well. And I will continue to preach that to all youth throughout my life.
Yeah, no, it's a valuable thing, and really, especially where I live in New Jersey, if you're just a football player from, call it January or December up until February, you can't be outside playing football. So if you're competing in basketball, you're competing in other sports, inside, and you're able to keep that competitiveness going, it's going to benefit you in the long run for sure.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, we asked a lot of our podcast guests those questions about advice or sometimes if they've played multiple sports, but that was one of the really better, more complete answers that we've had a guest provide. So that was really good. Um, so now, Nick, that you're no longer an athlete at Pitt, just talk about what your role is going to be like, watching the Pitt Panthers as a worker, as a employee, as a company. Like, are you going to be going to games? You're going to be watching them on TV? How's that going to work out?
Yeah, so I was able to go to a game last year. I tried to find a weekend that the Steelers and Pitt played at home in the same weekend, so I could see Kenny play and I could see the Panthers play. I'm definitely going to try to at least go to one game a year. Still have a ton of friends that live in Pittsburgh. Still always want to support Pitt, especially with some of the coaches and players that I played with still being there. Definitely want to make at least one game a year. So I got to figure that out this season, which game I'm going to go to, but always going to support Pitt. Growing up, my brother had his team. He was always a Notre Dame fan. But I never jumped on a team that I liked in college. I was a pro fan through and through, whether it was basketball or football, baseball. But I never had a favorite college football team or college basketball team. So I have no prior reservations. So making sure that I'm always going to be a Pitt fan through and through, not supporting any other team for football and basketball. So always going to be watching the games and rooting on the team. But like I said, trying to get to one game a year at least.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sounds great. Well, Nick, if you didn't know, and this is for all our people that'll be watching, our podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. We also post snippets on our YouTube channel, the Sports Mecca podcast. So when this episode comes out, be sure to check it out on all those platforms. But Nick, once again, we've had the honor to have a lot of different college athletes come on, football, basketball. But again, we appreciate you, especially coming on and talking about your career at Pitt and then what you're doing right now.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It was awesome. Great questions and definitely helping out some people that are looking to get into college sports and keep getting advice from guys that have done it and have succeeded. So
Yeah. It's nice meeting you, Nick. It was nice to meet
yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you guys.
Mhm.